He is the independent filmmaker responsible for films like The Wicked One, Wicked Ones, and They See You. He is Tory Jones, and this Slasher Sports Center.
And I'm here to kill you.
I am Dracula.
You say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Tory Jones, welcome.
What's up, man?
Same old same. Man, listen, I know it is it's not on topic for an indie horror film podcast, but I know you caught the Elimination Chamber, didn't you?
I did. No.
Well, what'd you think about it? Well, I guess the ending, the main event. I mean, was I naive in thinking that there was just a chance that, Sammy could have come out with some kind of win?
Maybe a little bit naive.
Being in Montreal, I guess, is what did it.
Yeah.
Canada's never. It's like bizarro world there.
I enjoyed the premium live event, as they're now called. So I thought it was a great show, and I thought just the crowd was so into it. Man, they made it. So I thought the match was good too between Roman and Sammy.
Man, right? Yeah. So, like, I was thinking to myself, and I actually tweeted this out. I said, "Man, I wish that Sami Zayn would get the pop that he gets, in this scenario, like every week. Like, I don't know that there's a more deserving, superstar like him. I hate to even say the word superstar. He's a fucking pro wrestler,
Yeah.
But you said premium live event. It wouldn't be WWE if they didn't, rebrand just the simplest words, pay-per-view, because it's not a pay-per-view. But I mean, we still refer to it as such, right? So yeah. I don't know. WWE's really bad about that, and renaming is probably one of those things that irks me the most about WWE.
Yeah. I will say that WWE has gotten significantly better under Triple H, I think.
Yeah, when you've got a wrestler, running wrestling things,
yeah,
things are going to improve, and if he has the business acumen, then even better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, listen, Triple H, nobody ever politicked his way better at the same time as just being.
Hey, now you're talking about my favorite wrestler.
Politicking is not the dirty word that a lot of people might think it is. He played the game, but he paid his dues. It's one thing to not pay your dues and then politic your way to the top. He paid his dues because they were going to bury him after the curtain call.
Yeah.
In 95, I guess it was. Yeah. So he gutted it out, and I think about wrestlers who pay their dues and then end up, really shining because of it. And a lot of people don't think that it still happens. I think they just think you start off hot and you start making money if you have the right look. The Miz, man, there's no reason for him to have gotten to the top other than paying his dues, because he ate shit for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Long time. But yeah, there was a killer main event. I thought maybe being in Montreal, they were going to do some kind of bizarro finish. I mean, Jacques Rougeau beat Hulk Hogan, pinned him clean in Montreal. It used to be that Montreal matches were like they didn't happen.
Yeah.
If they didn't happen in MSG or on TV, it just didn't happen. It was for the live crowd only. But I guess in a, what is it called? A premium live event?
Yeah.
it's hard to pull that switcheroo.
Yeah. I think that WrestleMania this year is going to be one to see for sure.
It's gonna be banging.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a booming show for lack of a better term. I think that Cody and Roman have the potential to tear down the house, and it's looking like it's going to be Sammy and KO versus the Usos. Is what it's looking like to me.
I could see that, and then being tag champs or something. But like I'm really like, I don't really know if that would just get the reaction they want, to main event. Who knows what's gonna main event day one.
Yeah,
assuming it's gonna be a 2-night event like it's been.
Yeah,
which is the best thing that basically came out of COVID. If I'm not being minimizing anything.
Yeah.
But two-night events are fantastic. I actually don't watch the weekly shows, Tory. I only watch the paper premium live events.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do watch weekly is the NWA.
Oh.
And I can't get enough of the NWA. And man, when I tell you that some of my favorite guys in pro wrestling right now are NWA guys, I'm not being facetious. If you remember, guys like LA Knight, are NWA guys.
Yeah,
he was a Eli Drake, and COVID just decimated everything, right? And it almost put the NWA out of business, or at least Corgan to halt operations, and he did for a while. Yeah. But I mean, they're just hot right now, man. And you got a guy named Thrillbilly Silas Mason.
Yeah,
that's my number one guy right now in pro wrestling. And
I
it's not even
watched
close.
NWA.
You have or have not?
I have not. I have not watched Corgan's NWA.
Man, I'll throw this out. If you're a hardcore political, you'll have a hard time watching it. Mm-hmm. If you can excuse the politics from the real lives of these wrestlers, then you'll have a fun time. I mean, they got a monster heel in Tyrus as the world champion, who was the Funkadactyl. He's far removed from that character.
Yeah,
but he's on Fox News like 5 nights a week. Okay, so you kind of see which way they lean and how that might kind of get the ugly face from some viewers. And I'll admit, at first it got me too. I was like, man, I really don't want to see a wrestling brand that's this steeped in political commentary, at least public, right? But Tyrus has made a good monster heel. They've got Matt Cardona, aka Zack Ryder, who's one of the main guys. Trevor Murdoch was just their champion for a good while.
Yeah.
So
I remember Trevor Murdoch.
Like, he had a great character when it was him and was it Lance Cade that were a tag team? Ridiculous. But I mean, it's a fun thing if what you enjoy is the studio wrestling type of thing. So I try not to.
What's your thoughts on AEW?
Man, they started out and I was like, hey, this might be like my number one thing here. This might be my number one watch, because I'm a big Jericho guy anyway.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like, ever since unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of his Japan work, his Mexico work, or his ECW work. I didn't watch ECW religiously like I should have.
Yeah.
Even though like he was there at a time when like there was nothing more important to me than pro wrestling. My teen years. But some of the guys that were over there with him, like Cody and Olivier, he's I'm fans of those guys.
Right.
I'm not fans of like the Young Bucks. Like, they I don't know what it is about them. Maybe it's their faces. Maybe it's their sideburns. I don't know. I can't dig them though. Yeah. And like I'm super kicked out is basically what I am.
I'm kind of the same. I thought that they really they had the momentum, especially when Brian jumped over and Adam Cole. That was pretty cool. And then after the Punk thing, man, and Punk putting people in their place, it just went down the tubes, in my opinion.
We got a couple of folks chiming in. Spooky Madison, greetings.
Oh boy.
Tell me about Spooky. How do you know Spooky Madison?
So she's actually in my latest film, Phantom Fun World. So she's a big part of that, and she's going to be a big part of my next film that we're shooting later this year. But yeah, she's a good friend, and I see Chuck's in here as well. Love both of those guys. They're awesome.
The beard do speak. It do.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Well, speaking of, I guess we can move on from the pro wrestling topic.
Okay.
We're 10 minutes deep, and we haven't even talked film yet. But God, man, it's good to know you're a pro wrestling fan, so I can hit you up on the side when some crazy shit happens.
Yeah.
But listen, man, 2011, you made a film called Killbillies. First of all, love the title. Love the title.
Yeah.
Any kind of pun with hillbilly, I love it. It doesn't matter what it is. But this was the debut film for Jonestown Films.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the inception of your studio, Jonestown Films.
So I got started in 2009. I'd always wanted to make movies. That's always been my thing. But I stumbled upon a set working a haunted house and met some people who were in the industry. Greg Brock, who you had on the show recently with Jacob Ennis, met Greg, and a couple of those guys sort of helped me out on my first attempt at making a film, which was a fan film called Halloween Homecoming. And that was in 2009. And that was a nightmare. Just putting it out there, it was never truly finished. So 2 years later, I came back and I did Killbillies, and still very inexperienced in the world of making movies, like to actually make movies, not just to, backyard movies or whatever.
Sure.
So it was an experience, but the film actually didn't even get released until a couple of years ago. A good friend of mine said, "Hey, we should release this as your first film." And I was like, "No one should ever see this movie." He was like, "People will watch this just because it's your first film and because of it's one of those, it's almost so bad it's good things, I guess people will get into. I don't get it. But so it was super low budget. It was made for zero money. And it was all shot at actually my wife's parents' house at the time. We had just started dating. And so, yeah, that's how Killbillies was made. And when we did Killbillies is when I sort of started Jonestown Films, which is just sort of me making the kind of movies that I grew up loving and wanting to see. So,
listen, I've always heard, if you make movies for yourself, you're going to find people that are like-minded and they're going to want to see your work too.
Yeah.
And people can really point out when something isn't made genuinely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like a Garth Brooks rock album. You just knew it was fake, man.
Mm-hmm.
And my good friend Ben Johnson, he always laughs because I bring his name up every fucking podcast, and I don't do it on purpose. But man, when you drop some sage words on me, I gotta harken back and smarten the people up. But he said, making a movie and doing it with your heart, and it turns out bad, that's still a fun film.
Right.
But if you do it to be edgy and just purposely try to make a bad film, it's ass, and people know that it is.
Yeah.
So
I know people that do that. I
ironically bad. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like to be like purposely bad. And I'm not one of these filmmakers who thinks I'm like the next, Jordan Peele, or that I'm the cutting edge, or that I'm trying to be this big thing. I just want to be successful at making the movies that I love. And is my brand for everyone? No, but there are people that do love that brand. Mainly slashers, of course, is my favorite sort of subgenre in horror. And, those are the movies that I love the most. Like, and there's not really been a lot of mainstream slasher movies recently, with the exception of like tentpole franchise slasher movies.
Sure.
Independent wise, there's been a few, but nothing that really has stood out. And those characters that I grew up with, sort of like the Michael and the Jason and the Freddy and all that, those are like, we need a new character like that.
Well, when you guys made the Wicked One,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that can be looked at as a turning point for Jonestown films. I mean, there are a lot of, there are a lot of one-off slasher films, over the years, but it's not, percentage-wise, very often that a villain can stick around and call for sequels.
Yeah.
So what is the Wicked One done for the studio?
Man, it gave us our legs. Honestly, that film was super difficult to make. Not because the team was bad or not because the team was problematic, but just trying to do so much with $12,000. That was a movie made for 12 grand. And somehow we managed to pull off what we did. And it's not a gory film. That's not what it is, mainly because we didn't have the money to do it. But the character of the Wicked One, for whatever reason, just took off. And, that was a film that we sold out our first pressing on day one. All retailers, it was gone. You couldn't find it online. They had to restock. And just the premiere, when we had the premiere and there was like 600 people there, that was crazy because I walked out and was not expecting that. And dude, it just blew my mind. And that film still today, that film still is making money all these years later.
That's wild. I mean, this is your, this is your tentpole, I mean,
yeah,
it called for a sequel. A lot of filmmakers don't get to the point where there's even enough attention on a film to make a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, now you have it. I mean, you've got your, I guess your landmark character, right?
Yeah.
But in this film, Katie Stewart, Dale Miller, they were both involved in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of experience between the two of them, a variety of ability there as well. But how were they able to both elevate the team and the quality of the film?
Katie was the first person that I actually went after for the film. I had known Katie for a while, and she was very well known in Kentucky as an actress and super talented in her and in everything that she's been in. She's just super talented. I love Katie to death. Now she's only, I joke with her, she's only 4 foot, but she's awesome and packs a punch as far as her performances go. But through Katie, I met Dale, and then we all became very close over making these 2 movies. But they've went on to have successful careers. Dale, of course, was he did stunts on 2018's Halloween movie. He's been in Mom and Dad. He's been in Tragedy Girls, doing work. He's just he's awesome at what he does. Love those 2, but they were super important to the success of that. And then Cheyenne Gordon, who co-wrote the film with me, was also in that film. And I really think that those 3 and Sonia, I cannot mention Sonia, who's been in every film I've ever done since then, but Sonia, and then of course Jack Norman, who played the Wicked One. Those guys, man, just anchored that movie and just made it something just completely, it was awesome. And they're all super awesome to work with. Yeah.
Katie Stewart, ton of experience, like in the neighborhood of 50, more than 50 acting roles, a lot of leads. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's good to know that was, something that was maybe in your back pocket, something that, you had this relationship that you can, at the right time, I don't want to say cash it in because like nobody owes anybody anything.
Right.
But, if friends do friends favors, this is the favor to call in. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. She's great, man.
And Dale Miller. I mean, if you're not familiar with Dale, he's done a lot of stunt work in a lot of films, most notably, Halloween, the David Gordon Green film from 2018.
Yep.
Probably the least controversial of the 3. So he's got that going for him.
Yeah.
But Dark Knight of the Scarecrow 2. which is, I guess the recent sequel to one of my favorite one-off. Well, I mean, I guess it was a one-off until they went and screwed that up. No, it was a good film though. I mean, it's again one of those films that is like so bad it's great sometimes, in certain parts of it. But I mean, I enjoyed it. The original Charles Durning or Pappy O'Daniel was absolutely great in it. But it's him and the killer was Dr. Giggles. And fun fact, Dr. Giggles was almost the very first episode, a review of that film. I guess a throwback episode of Dr. Giggles was going to be our opening episode of Slashers and Screamers in my first horror film podcast. And it got outvoted by When a Stranger Calls. So, you live, you learn.
Yeah.
But Dale Miller, he was in Kill Granny Kill, a film, if you've listened to the podcast for a while. Jake Ennis directed that one, co-wrote with Greg Brock, two folks that you brought up already. And I believe you were involved in that film as well.
Not really. I think I may have contributed a little bit to their campaign they did, and I was supposed to be the assistant director on it, but there was a conflicting schedule thing. I can't remember what, but I was originally supposed to be an assistant director on that film.
Well, Dale and Katie on board changed the game, like you mentioned before. Now, you co-wrote the first Wicked One film, and with Cheyenne Gordon, you've mentioned her name.
It's a him.
Cheyenne was. Say that again.
That's a him, actually.
I don't know Cheyenne.
Yeah,
I need to have Cheyenne on.
You should, yeah,
because I feel like this is dumb, but ever since meeting Greg and Jake. I'm watching things and I'm like, you know what? Like this person's connected to this person. That person's connected to that person. And I never knew anything about Cheyenne. I was like, I have to figure out. I got to talk to Cheyenne one day.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're like, Cheyenne was involved in the film The Art of Killing. And that one, I want to say there was maybe an associate writer's credit for Cheyenne.
Are we talking about the new Art of Killing or like the original one Greg tried to do?
The original.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 2014, there was a 2014 that was written, and that's kind of like turned into what we're about to see in 2023, because I need to see a killer Bob Ross. I need it. Yeah. I need it like I need air. Tory.
So this is the funny thing about Cheyenne. So originally, I could be mistaken about this, but we were going to do a film called Slasher Flick. That was the name of the film. It was self-referential. It was Scream, and
a little meta, maybe.
It was very meta, very self-aware. And then what happened was things changed, and that got sent off to Greg to do, and Greg changed it to The Art of Killing and made it about the art thing. That was all Greg's thing. Well, me and Cheyenne took what was going to be, I guess, Slasher Flick, and that morphed into a film called Scream for Summer. And Scream for Summer, I was involved with up until they actually shot the film. I didn't get to be on set because I was doing Angel at the time, but that ultimately was all from Cheyenne's Slasher Flick concept. So Art of Killing, the original Art of Killing, I don't think it was quite like Jacobs with the Bob Ross character. I think that was more of a whodunit as well. Without Jason Crow. But so that all came from Cheyenne. And Cheyenne has been involved in, every film I've done up until Phantom Fun World. He was involved with writing or helping me with the story in some way.
So what is the writing dynamic between you two?
Cheyenne is super talented at characters and super talented at giving them a voice. And also because Cheyenne grew up in the 90s on films like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and Kevin Williamson, that DNA is entrenched in him. So in his writing, it just comes across. He's got that same sort of Kevin Williamson voice about him, And so he's always super easy to work with. I'm probably the more difficult one because I have all of these different ideas that are all firing off, and I'm like, but what if we did this, or what if we did this? And then, I'm probably the reason Cheyenne's bald, honestly. But he's great to work with, and he works with my buddy Sean a lot. He's wrote Sean's movies, several movies, Stranded, that they just premiered at Horror Hound last year. So he's a great writer. Great writer.
Well, speaking of great writers, for Wicked Ones, you and Nate Thomas Milner co-wrote this one. Nate's worn a lot of hats over the years in indie film. But the one thing that I might always think about him doing is the short film. First of all, I love short films.
Yeah.
I like in the last year, I've probably consumed more short films than I have in the other 39 years of my life.
Right.
Yeah, by far. But as a short film way back in like 2014, 2015-ish. But basically it takes us back to 73 and the Springwood Police Department.
Yeah.
They just arrest a fella they believe to be the notorious child murderer known as the Springwood Slasher. And if you haven't been sleeping in a coffin, the Springwood Slasher is Mr. Fred Krueger. I think it's a very, very cool concept.
Yeah.
It's probably something I never considered. I didn't consider something like this until I played the Friday the 13th video game. And you've got those tapes that you can collect, those cassette tapes that you can collect, in the different maps. And I thought, man, like, what if, we were doing like interviews, like interrogations with, these serial killers, because it has to happen eventually, right? Whether they talk or whether they don't talk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you see Nate, you tell him I said that shit, and I'll say it again. Fantastic job on that.
Same sort of thing with Nate as far as that movie. He wrote most of that film in terms of the characters, and it just worked. I didn't have to do much with Nate. It was just an easy process. Like he got it.
It's so good to work with people like that.
Yeah.
So good to people yeah. Well, between the Wicked One and Wicked Ones, you filmed a film called Angel. And you said Angel, and I read this. It was your most enjoyable filmmaking experience to date. Does that still hold true? Have you done something since then that maybe you feel a little bit better about?
Angel was the easiest, I think, in terms of everything just clicking for the film. Like, oh, we want to do this abandoned town. Oh, well, we found it. Everything just worked for that film. But I would have to say that Angel, for as good as it was, does not compare to They See You as far as the best experience I've had making a movie. They See You was camp, man. It was 2 weeks away with people and the crew, everybody. It was just so easy. They were all serving the vision of the film. They weren't complaining. There wasn't any nagging. There wasn't, oh, I'm tired. There wasn't people creating issues. Like, it was just fun. And here's the thing about that film. I think what made it fun is we were always together on They See You. The cast worked, the crew worked. And then, of course, we were in this theater, this big theater room that didn't have chairs in it. And we were all sleeping on air mattresses. And we would turn on, I think Zack Snyder's Justice League came out right at that time when we were filming, while we were on set. And we streamed it, I feel like, on the screen. So we were all laying there of a night watching all these movies on the screen and laying on air mattresses. And we ate there, we slept there, we went out and shot the movie, but we were all together. And it was just an incredible experience. I've not had an experience where everything worked like that before or since. So,
well, when you're all going through the struggle seems a little bit more palpable.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind eating, hot dogs on loaf bread plain.
Yeah.
If I have 10 of my best buds around me doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we ate well on that film, man. My assistant director and one of the producers, Ken, his wife cooked dinners for us and brought it. So we had dinners every day. We ate 2 times a day, really well, and that one wasn't hard. That one really wasn't hard. None of our nights went long. We were done except for maybe one night. We were done by 1 a.m. every night. It felt like, and it was just easy, man. It was just. And it was different too because it was more lighthearted than my other stuff, which was more serious. So it was like a coming of age, like Goosebumps, or like a not meant to be a serious horror film in a sense. In some ways it is, but it was just fun, man. It was just a great experience.
Well, we've talked about films that were on the lower end of the micro budget,
Mm-hmm.
but on the upper end of the micro budget, you got Phantom Fun World.
Yeah.
And that kind of marked Jonestown Films, probably your largest budget to date, right? You said that earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean the Indiegogo for Phantom Fun World, it raised over 50 grand.
Yeah.
And that's, first of all, I just covered a film by my good friend Steve Merlo.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Sawyer Massacre, is a fan film of
Mm-hmm.
the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Did outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think he barely topped 20 grand on his Indiegogo and knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
So 50 grand is bananas.
Our total budget for that film, counting investments, was closer to 100 grand.
Jesus H. Christ.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I mean,
we did a lot though with that film as far as set builds. I mean, we built entire sets on like in warehouses and stuff. So there was a lot that went into that film that people don't, even the people involved, I don't think realize like this is where this money went to. They all got paid, but it wasn't like there's $6 grand in production design alone. Because that was when all the money, all the inflation sort of started, and everything was getting more expensive, and lumber, and it was insane. It just kept going up.
Well, my former co-hosts on the Slashers and Screamers podcast and I were talking about the fact that we don't have enough theme park horror films.
Yeah.
And that led to us looking up Hellfest. And Hellfest is one of those. I absolutely love Hellfest.
I love
and yeah, it's one of those one-offs, and like maybe they won't make another sequel and ruin it being a one-off. But I mean, I really dug it, and we ended up watching it, reviewing it on the podcast, and it's one of my more memorable ones because it was brand new to everybody.
Yep. And it might have been easy. It was just a simple.
It couldn't have been simpler. It followed the formula perfectly. And you've got a simple killer. You're in a theme park. Everybody's having fun. Nobody's any the wiser until people start getting dead. And it's just your simple formulaic horror experience in a place where you're supposed to be having the time of your life. And go check it out. Hellfest. Hellfest. Well, Phantom Fun World. All right. Like this film would be inspired by a combination of, quote, and I quote, Scooby-Doo, Chuck E. Cheese, and 80 slashers.
No.
Chuck E. Cheese, huh?
Oh, yeah.
That chef is a scary fuck, man. I'll tell you what. He is.
Yeah.
He always gave me nightmares. But, I'm old enough to remember Chuck E. Cheese being Showbiz Pizza. And I don't know if people remember that too much, but they just basically used the old animatronics and added a mouse and gave him a name. But yeah, this is right up my alley, man.
Yeah.
I love a good whodunit. And Scooby-Doo, no matter how you look at it, Scooby-Doo is like the caricature of Hercule Poirot. I mean, solves the crimes every time, batting 1,000, got its quirks, but I love a good whodunit. And an animated whodunit like Scooby-Doo was amazing. And I don't think it gets, the credit that it deserves for being, probably a top 3 cartoon in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whodunit, I loved what you did here with Phantom Fun World. I can't wait to see more out of it. But listen, big names. All right, you've got big names involved in Phantom Fun World. Who are they, and how did you get them involved?
Yeah. So I will say before I name them, Phantom Fun World is part whodunit and then part old school slasher. And I don't want to, that's all I'll say about it. There is a whodunit element to it, but that would spoil. So we'll leave it at that for now. But as far as who I have in the film, Ari Lehman, who was the very first Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, has a band called First Jason.
First Jason.
Yep. Ari. I had Elsie, who was in the Adam Wingard film You're Next, and was also in VHS 2, I believe. And Elsie's great, just easy to work with, very complimentary of the film and his experience on it. He was a true professional in every sense of the word. And then I had Wes Robinson, also from an Adam Wingard film, the Blair Witch movie that came out in, I want to say
15, 16, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It came out around that time period. But again, just a super awesome experience working with all of those guys, all from very awesome horror movies and all with their own unique style as far as acting goes, and but very collaborative in the whole filmmaking process. All those people were. Phantom Fun World, you mentioned earlier, Wicked One sort of being that character. And as of now, it is that character that I'm known for. It's still, I sell more copies of that at conventions I go to. It's still making money. And my friends who are producers on the Terrifier movies, the Levies and Fuzz on the Lens, them along with another filmmaker friend, Andy Palmer, who directed films like Camp Coldbrook and Funhouse Massacre and stuff like that. Those guys tell me that there is something about that character, and I need to give it the Terrifier treatment and come back to it and do it on a bigger budget level in a few years. So 2026 would be 10 years since that first Wicked one. So maybe we'll see what happens. But I will say, I think the Phantom and Phantom Fun World has so much potential and could really be something. It's probably the best looking film I've done in some aspects, but it was a difficult film to make, but I think the potential is there for that character to really take off. And there's some people that I've talked to that's reached out to me that are pretty well known within the genre who seem to think the same thing. So we'll see how that goes, but there is interest in it to maybe hopefully have a limited theatrical run. That is the goal as of now. And indie film is sort of booming in that aspect with Terrifier and the Winnie the Pooh and the Skinamarink and stuff like that. That's sort of going off. So there is interest in that being a possibility, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, I think you've done a really good job here, making memorable villains or, slashers, and the Phantom is coming to mind as I say that.
Yeah.
I guess I want to know, just tell me a little bit about getting the Phantom down on paper. And what did you do to make the Phantom not be just another carbon copy of past villains?
So I think it's really in the performance and the presentation and in the branding of that character. Like with that film, there's so much built-in branding that it's very easy to say, oh, I'm an auteur filmmaker and I'm making the next great thriller film. But with that film, it was a combination of things. There's so much built in. I can brand the brand of Phantom Fun World. And, our villain is obsessed with the brand and obsessed with the character. So with the design and getting that down on paper, I worked with concept artists and we went back and forth. And do we go this way? Do we go that way? And then something popped into my mind from Saturday morning cartoons growing up. I can't remember what it was from. It might have been like from Courage the Cowardly Dog or something like that. I don't know, but something popped into my mind. And then Sean, who's actually the editor on the film, I said it needs to kind of give me like Mr. Freeze from Batman vibes, but like an old man with like the hair. And if you look at the logo, you see it. You can't unsee it once you know that. Like it's Mr. Freeze from the animated series of Batman, and he's got hair. That's who the Phantom is. But once we got that, man, it was just. And there's other mascots that's in the film that you could totally brand them. There's the that are Scooby Doo inspired. Like there's Chainsaw Charlie, and there's the Tiki Witch Doctor, which is straight from Scooby Doo, our version of that. And then there's like the Blue Ghost and other characters. So it was creating this whole world that exists within the movie, and then sort of putting that whole world under a microscope and saying all of that was what this was known for, but then this tragedy happened, and this is what it's known for now. This kid kind of went nuts and was obsessed with the character of the Phantom, and so he literally became the character of the Phantom. And then he disappears, and where he's been and all that. Again, spoiler, I won't tell you, but I think it has that potential, man. Just the look and I have the mask here somewhere. I wish I would have brought it in. I would have pulled it up and showed it on the video, but it's great, man.
I love what you're doing, man. I honestly do. And I'm not throwing that, I'm not just pulling that out my ass. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I was entertained thoroughly with everything I watched this week. And, I watched everything that, I could find.
Yeah.
And the links to your films are going to be in the episode description to this episode.
Yeah.
And so I want everybody to go and find Tory's films. And there's no excuse not to. They're going to be right here in the episode description. But, man, it's just a good time in horror.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic time in horror. You brought it up earlier. You were going to have that limited, we hope to have that limited run in theaters like Terrifier, which got extended. It was only supposed to be a weekend, right?
Right.
And it got extended because, or Terrifier 2 rather. And Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey had the same situation. It was only supposed to be for a very limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. It's getting extended. It's in theaters this week. Not sure when it's going to be leaving.
Same budget with Phantom 2. It had the same budget. It's made over $1 million already. So
wild, man. It basically lined it up to get extended. And I love it, man. It's like giving children's literature a horrific turn just seems like the natural progression of how we like our characters.
I think too, it's not necessarily that those like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is the kind of film that I look to see. But it's also like sometimes being a filmmaker is more than just making the film, It's more than, especially on an independent level, like you have to look at how are you going to deliver the film? How are you going to sell the film? What about this film is going to make people want to watch it? When on the indie level, there is so much content. So you have to have a different hook or a different character that people will respond to. And sometimes they don't, Sometimes they don't respond to it, but you have to look at more than just I'm making a movie just to make a movie,
I mean, sometimes they don't respond immediately, and then somehow 10 years later, it just blows up. I mean, films like Billy Jack hit theaters and flopped. Films like The Warriors hit theaters and flopped. And it's not until, much later that fans are like, what were we thinking? Like, these films are great. When Billy Jack, he's got his shoes off in the park and he says, I'm going to put this foot on that side of your face. And there's nothing you can do about it. And then axe kicks the mayor right in the face. When you miss things like that, maybe you don't realize it the first time around that you're watching like real artistry in motion.
Yep.
But I mean, I say if it flops, that's no indication of the product.
Right.
Keep pushing it out there when you believe in it. I believe in you, man. And I wouldn't have you on here if I didn't. I'll cancel a request at the drop of a hat, if you're not about some shit, and I love what you've done. But I just wonder though, like at what point did we start rooting for the bad guys, right? I mean, and that's really what we do. because just rooting for the villain is always fun. Okay, we talked about already. I promised myself I wasn't going to bring up any more pro wrestling stuff. But back in the 80s, man, we didn't root for the bad guys.
Right.
We rooted for Ricky Steamboat to kick Ric Flair's ass. We rooted for Hulk Hogan to slam Andre.
Yep.
And somewhere along the lines, a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin popped up and said, man, it's a little bit cool to be bad.
Right.
And he kind of defined what the anti-villain or anti-hero is in a situation like that. So I think maybe with Winnie the Pooh, it's maybe we need him to be bad now. He's always been so wholesome and wonderful, but now maybe we need him to kind of harden up a little bit and throw some knives in some guts, and I'm with it. But children's literature's always been scary, man.
Yeah,
it's always been scary. Just think about Rumpelstiltskin.
He's
not like a. You got it. You're.
Did you see the old Rumpelstiltskin movie?
You're damn right I did. Like when they announced that film, I said, "Oh my God, this was made for me. I love this." And I went to school telling people, I was like, "Hey, man, I want to see that Rumpelstiltskin." And I remember one of my football teammates was like, "Rumpelstiltskin? I'm going to see Varsity Blues, man." No, Rumpelstiltskin was some scary shit.
It scared the crap out of me as a kid, dude. But looking at it now, it's so awful. It's such a bad movie.
Oh yeah, it's a pile of shit. But like they had intentions of making it look great. And if I'm being honest, man, that's how I would like for all of them to be. All of them. Hansel and Gretel. They did it with Hansel and Gretel. They made a kind of fun Hansel and Gretel horror flick. I mean, they need to go back and do the same thing with, dude. If they were to make a bad like a horror Charlie Brown film, I'd be there. I'd be there on day one.
What's funny about Rumpelstiltskin is the director is actually the same. I'm pretty sure it's Mark Jones who directed Leprechaun. So I'm almost 100% sure he did Rumpelstiltskin too.
We're going to have to verify that, but I bet you're right. Mark Jones sounds right. And I didn't think that I'd be talking about the film Rumpelstiltskin today. So I didn't do any homework on the film. I remember loving it, and I can only tell you, from the heart how I felt about it. But other than like children's literature,
it was him. He directed. Yeah,
Mark Jones, you're a fucking saint. I love you for it.
$3 million budget movie. $3 million. It only made 300,000. So at the box office.
Well, he's got somebody in his attic spinning gold and taken away from him. But yeah, no, listen, I like a good alternative history with a horror turn as well. Do you remember Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter?
Yeah.
When that came out, man, you would have thought I was buying tickets to The Godfather because I ate that film up. I don't even remember who played Abe, but films like that with alternative histories, I absolutely loved them.
Yeah.
And God, man. So what's coming out? I mean, Blood and Honey's coming out, or it's in theaters. The one film I want to see, and it's like it might be kind of up your alley. I don't know, but She Came from the Woods is a film it's out right now, and I believe it's also got a short theater run. It's an Eric Blomquist flick. Blomquist, he wrote and directed the short film a number of years ago, and of course it blossomed into this a la Ferdita and Piggy, a la Boogie Nights, just a successful short that turned into a feature. And getting this feature now, I mean, listen, Blomquist's done everything, man. He's done teen flicks to erotic thrillers. Yeah. He's run the gamut, but I mean, he's got variety. But as much as I hate films where like everyone's appearance is flawless, like I'm watching the CW, like even the ugliest person on the show is still hot.
Yeah.
I mean, this film has Bill Sadler in it, William Sadler. So you're goddamn right, I'm going to watch it. I got nothing but time for Bill Sadler, and like '90s teens are going to remember him as Death from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
But she came from the woods like a throwback to the '80s slasher, much like we were talking about with Funhouse.
Yeah.
But I guess we got to go back and figure out cutting my teeth on slasher films in the '80s. What got you into horror?
So my first experience with horror was on. My dad went to the movies with some people and decided to take me, and I was very young, but he went and watched the Tales from the Crypt Demon Night movie. And I got scared as a kid, and we had to leave that movie. But my dad that was sort of our thing, is he, hey, have you ever seen Cujo? Well, let's watch Cujo. Well, Dad, I'm 6 or 7 years old. I probably shouldn't be watching some of these movies. Have you seen The Exorcist? No. But that time in my life was so informative because I lived at the movie stores. Like literally, my parents were separated, but that was my thing, was the movie stores. And I would walk into a movie store and I would just spend like an hour. It'd be like 45 minutes to an hour of me just going through each movie. Like, what's this about? And that really, like, it was the hole in the wall mom and pop movie stores that were just so informative. Like the posters on the wall, Candyman, I can remember it. I can smell it. Literally what it smelled like. It smelled like Marlboro Lights and like popcorn. And like I can literally smell it. But that is really what is influencing my next film, which is pretty much set in the 90s at one of those video stores. But that was what was informative to me. And I just, everything I could consume, horror movies doesn't scare me per se, like, but it's the weird stuff that scares me, like like a Parasite or something like that. That stuff bothers me. But like, dude killing people, Jason or whatever, like none of that ever scared me. The Exorcist really never. It scared me as a kid. I was scared to death, but I guess you become desensitized to all that and growing up. But all that was so informative to my love for horror, the artwork. And then of course I watched Halloween at some point, and that changed everything for me.
You're talking about spending an hour at the video store, and that is a story that so many people have. Mm-hmm. And like, listen, kids, if you've ever sat down and scrolled through Netflix for an hour and couldn't pick something out, imagine walking into a store where your little timeline, not your timeline, your feed there on Netflix, where you're scrolling side to side, that's just a shelf full of movies with only like one box on the shelf. Because if it was a Blockbuster, it's going to have like 8 copies. But no, the section we went to, it only had 1 copy each. And if you didn't get it this week, you can get it next week, maybe.
Yeah.
But the video store trip is a lost antiquity.
I know.
And it's unfortunate.
I know.
It's understandable, because if it was something that was, being paid for, it would still be happening.
Yeah.
But it's really inexplicable to tell somebody that's, maybe wasn't born before 2005.
Right.
Then what type of trip that was, because it was a special trip. You wait until Saturday. You go Saturday morning, because you can't, if you go Friday and you get your films, you got to take them back on Saturday. But if you rent them on Saturday, you get to keep them for 2 days, man. 2 days.
I know.
But Friday the 13th gripped me as a kid, and I shouldn't have been watching it either. And I've told this tale numerous times, but I don't know how old you are. You look substantially younger than I am.
33.
So, okay, I'm 40 until June, and then I'll be 40. But when in 1986, okay, I'm 4 years old, 86, 87, depending on the month. But I'm 4 years old. I haven't yet started school. We didn't have a very large income in my family. We're kind of a big family, I guess, for rural Tennessee. Family of I've got 4 sisters, myself, and there's my mom, my stepdad, and we're making it on a welder salary. Okay,
Yeah.
so you know how it bees.
Mhm.
So every now and then a month comes around and they're going to have date night. Well, we've got a neighboring town where you had everything, the restaurants there, the Walmart was there, and that's just where they would go. They'd save up a little bit and they'd go eat at a place called Bonanza. Okay. And if you don't know what Bonanza is what became Ponderosa, and Ponderosa just disappeared.
Yeah.
But basically they would go and I'd wait. Sometimes I'd go with them, but I would wait because I'd previously walked through our living room to find my parents watching this film. And it's a film they shooed me through the living room. I wasn't allowed to watch it with them for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
So they leave, they go on date night, and I say, okay, it's now time. I sneak into my parents' closet. I push all the adult films out of the way
Oh gosh.
because I don't have any use as a 4-year-old
Yeah.
for Indiana Jones. Okay.
What?
I've got no use for it.
Okay.
So I find the movie Friday the 13th Part 2. And you know how I was a shitty kid? I'll tell you why I was a shitty kid. Because I had the wherewithal to look at the tapes and I could see like how far in the movie was, because you could see the film on this side, the film on this side. You
Mhm.
put in the movie, you see what part it's on. That way I know when I finish it, I've got to rewind it back to that part just in case my mom remembers where she turned it off. So I rewind it, the opening scene, the cold open of Friday the 13th Part 2. You got the little girl singing Itsy Bitsy Spider. You see the foot drop in the water. And I don't know anything about Jason. I only know that, this is something I'm not supposed to watch. I haven't even watched Part 1 yet. This is my first one. You got the scene where the first person point of view, the cat jumping through the window. My first jump scare ever, by the way, the cat jumping through the window. And watching this film from beginning to end through the cracks of my fingers, it really is something special that I'm always going to hold to high esteem. Because it really formed the way I look at film.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put myself in a place where I'm the little 4-year-old kid looking through the cracks of my fingers. And in order to do that, established gentlemen like yourself have to engage all the senses.
Yep.
Sight and sound and feel, anticipation, And I think with what I've seen, Tory, you've done a great job with that.
Thank you.
And yes, sir. Now, what I will say though, slashers, I kept it pretty strictly slashers for a very long time. Maybe some paranormal stuff. I didn't really care for The Exorcist. It just didn't do anything for me as a kid.
Yeah.
But the mind benders, so I just couldn't wrap my mind around. And it was probably age. I couldn't do anything with those either. But I needed something that said the bad guy on the screen was just who he was, not an allegory for what we do as a society or anything like that. Like Argento. Okay. Yep. I've tried so hard to be into Dario Argento. I spent a lot of time thinking people who like his films really only pretend to like his films so they can use the word elevated in a group and try to impress a girl or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the only film that I loved of his, that I actually truly loved, was his most recent one, Dark Glasses. I don't know if you've seen that one. Man, if you come off of anything with a suggestion, this is my suggestion to you. Watch Dark Glasses. It's on Shudder. It might be on Tubi as well. But I know it's on Shudder for sure. But that was a straight up slasher. No weird girl that communicates with bugs. No, whatever the hell else he's got going on, because he's a weird dude. But there was a little bit of a protagonist allegory there about fitting in with your surrounding community. because there's this Chinese kid who lives in Italy. He's getting picked on, and like the main character's blind, so like they're both kind of othered by the people around them, right?
Right.
But mostly no big deep meanings here, just a good old-fashioned slasher. And I'll leave it at that. So now, one question for you.
Okay.
Third time's a charm, man. I will not bring up pro wrestling after this. I promise you. I promise you I will not.
All right.
But we talked about Stone Cold Steve Austin a while back, right? And when he was coming up through the territories, he was coming through Memphis, and his riding partner was Dr. Tom Pritchard.
Yep.
And in order to help get Steve Austin, and actually Brian Lee, who was in the backseat with him, his nickname was Primetime Brian Lee, where Steve Austin was Stunning Steve Austin. In order to help these guys really feel their gimmick, Dr. Tom asked, Steve, what is so stunning about Stunning Steve Austin? And what is so prime time about Primetime Brian Lee? My question to you, what's so Tory Jones about Tory Jones?
Oh, gosh. I don't know, man. I don't really know what's so Tory Jones about Tory Jones. I think it's just
what do you hope viewers get when they think about a Tory Jones film? I guess that's what I'm trying to come away with.
I think that as far as my films go, it goes back to me loving, except for like They See You. And each film has slasher elements, but it's not like there's a straight slasher. I mean, Phantom Fun World is pretty much a cut and dry slasher movie. But I would hope that people can look somewhat beyond the surface of that and say, this is also a movie about this. Like with The Wicked One, it's taking something, it's telling a story, but not that everything I do, I want it to have some deep meaning or some deep built-in sort of say on what's happening in the world, or I don't care. I see enough of that online, and everyone's trying to, protest or burn down or do whatever they're trying to do or get their message across. And that's not necessarily what I want to do. My thing, I think, what is Tory Jones about Tory Jones is that all of my films deal with relationships. The Wicked One, you're dealing with family dynamics of a brother and a sister, a brother who, is pretty much a drug addict. And we find out he's a drug addict because his parents passed away and he feels he's responsible. And it just so happens that with her taking him back to the family's old farm, which before they owned it was owned by the Wicked One's family, that you have that confrontation of confronting your, as Jamie Lee would say, your trauma, confronting that trauma and all of that issues. And the Wicked One is that metaphor for that, right? And, and then with Angel, relationships, a daughter goes missing, and what lengths does a father go to find his daughter? So that was really about that relationship. And then, of course, Wicked Ones, you have, Katie's character going back to Carpenter Falls, and now all her friends and her brother are dead from the first Wicked One, and she blames herself for that. And the evil sort of has multiplied, and now because of her unresolved issues, it starts to affect her children. They See You, 3 outcasts. Like I said, that movie is more coming of age and lighthearted, but it's still about 3 brothers who stick together and do everything together. You got, one brother who doesn't want to be taking care of the younger brothers, but he is. And, that film's out there to see how it resolves, but, he would sacrifice himself for his brothers. And then Phantom Fun World, same thing, man. It's sort of about relationships again. And that, I think that's a component in all of my films to an extent, and not just familial relationships, but relationships with your best friends, relationships with with your coworkers or whatever it may be, because that's what makes me who I am, is the close relationships that I have with people, whether it be, my immediate family or my best friends in the world who literally I'm with all the time. That is what informs and is a big part of my makeup and my DNA, is the relationships I have. So I always try to have that in my films, and that will continue with moving forward with the next film, The Boy from Below, and on beyond that. But yeah, man, that's sort of what I guess would make Tory is the relationship things that.
I knew you'd find your way back.
Yeah,
I knew you'd find your way there.
That's sort of what makes me, I guess.
Love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't have you any other way. Tory, what do you got on the horizon, man? What's coming up for you?
So right now, wrapping up a post on Phantom Fun World, and then we'll deal with the release of that. And then later this year, we're going to be launching a crowdfunder for our next film I was telling you about, the VHS store movie, which is called The Boy from Below. And then we will be filming that probably October is when we will start production on that. And then after that, I think I'm going to take a break to sort of let my, as my dad says, let your wood dry out. Your wood has gotten wet and you need to let it dry out so you can start another fire. And then, I'm looking at wanting to do other kinds of films, man. I want to do some science fiction films, and I want to do, some post-apocalyptic films and just different stuff. I've done, that will be my 7th horror film. If you're a big number meaning guy, 7 usually means completion. So that will be the end of a certain journey for me. And then I want to sort of focus on other kinds of work and expanding. I have this, which I'll tell you this just because you're a wrestling fan. I have this really cool idea for like a post-apocalyptic, almost like a death match thing where people compete for a championship belt inside of this makeshift Mad Max type octagon wrestling ring type hybrid. So that's going to be a fun one that I really want to do. And that film is called, the story is called Rad Hazard. So, but that's all about competing for a belt and getting to live, but competing for a championship. So
you had me at pro wrestling, Tory. Well, folks, it is time to slide into the gag reels. Man, I want to thank you very much for for taking the time, come hang out with me, talk film a little bit, talk a little bit of wrestling and a little bit of nonsense. You're always welcome back. We're going to do some roundtables of some, maybe some films, and you've got an open invite there. So I'd be happy to have you back on. Now, guys, listen, that's going to do it for this week. He is Tory Jones. I am Billy Graves. Now go forth, and may you drink the blood of your enemies from the skulls of their children.